If you're doing any of these 5 things in your training, I guarantee that your gains will be far from optimal. So in today's video, I'll talk about what those errors are and how you can easily fix them. The first being not doing any isolation work whatsoever while skipping out on important movement patterns. This is all too common in most minimalist of novice programs. I'm not saying you gotta complicate your workouts, but when it becomes to the extent that you eliminate some of the best exercises, we have a serious problem. And what I see in most cases is doing 0 isolation work for the biceps and triceps. And then we wonder why many lifters are torso dominant when they hit the intermediate stage. It's cause and effect. Because you were sold a lie by a dogmatic coach who's too stubborn to modify his baby. Listen, I'm one of the biggest proponents on this platform of the compound movements. That's where the majority of your volume and progressive overload takes place. But when that ideology is taken to the extreme, you've lost the plot, and it only weakens the fitness community. Many times I'll see a Q&A thread and a guy will ask, hey, can I do 1 curl at the end of the program? And the response is typically no. What in the actual how can anyone in their right mind possibly recommend that? You're bound to develop muscular weaknesses. This I can absolutely promise you, especially if you're not even doing vertical pulls, which for some reason a lot of novice programs are not including. There's no pull-ups or even lat pull-downs for that matter if you want to keep it really simple. Actually, some of these systems don't even include rows. You'll have complete beginners doing power cleans. Why? I don't even do them in my training. And most lifters do not care about the performance elements that this exercise has to offer, and they just want to be buff. A barbell row is a far superior choice, or even using dumbbells for that matter. The problem is a lot of these programs are designed for athletes while being very powerlifting centric, which is not the goal of most people. So it's important that we acknowledge some of the faults of these systems and tweak them such that average lifters can get a little bit more of what they're actually looking for. And that means doing a small amount of isolation work. Could be 1 barbell curl, 1 tricep push down or extension, whatever you want to do, doesn't really matter, as well as possibly hitting an accessory for the lower body. I would say that if you do a Romanian deadlift or good morning for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps after your squats, you'll get better results in the posterior chain than if you just do 1 set of 5 on a conventional deadlift once a week. You'll get more jacked and, might I say, a lot stronger on your standard pull since the carryover is so high. And because you're a true novice, you won't need to go that heavy to begin with. So the stimulus is through the roof while having some of the lowest fatigue you'll ever experience in your entire life. Take advantage of this opportunity. Don't skip out on exercises that can feed into the greater exercises. That also means doing close grip bench to supplement your regular bench press. Now, all this stuff doesn't have to be done in one session, but at least split out throughout the week. So if you're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, make sure that you're not neglecting any of the important exercises, because later down the road, if you skip out on this, there's going to be a lot of catch up. That's something I can literally promise you. So it's important that we prevent plateaus from arriving in the first place. That'll bring me on to my second point, which is not pushing for PRs or progression in general. Greg Doucette would call this not training harder than last time, which is absolutely correct when we talk about many novice lifters. More often than not, they're capable of increasing the weight on, say, the squat by 5 pounds a session, yet they don't do it because of their mentality. They're not going close to failure while being afraid of adjusting the load. So the best solution that I found to this problem is by tracking every single one of your workouts. Logs will prove to you that yes, you can freaking do it. And it also helps when you have rep ranges that aren't static. So if your setup calls for 3 sets of 6 to 10 and you got 10, 9, 8, one workout, you know that you gotta push to get 10, 10, 10 before increasing the weight. But when that happens and you see it written down, there's no point doing that same weight over and over again. You're wasting your time as a novice lifter. So that's when you increase the weight, when you can acquire the upper extremities of those sets and reps. So I can yell at you all you want. I can say, hey, your mindset is off, which is probably true to a certain extent. But I don't find that's as helpful as you just writing everything down and seeing for yourself that you're in a delusional state of mind. And that's not me trying to insult you. I'm just trying to point out that, bro, you're capable of so much. And if you actually wrote the workouts, you would see that so clearly that you're probably watching less YouTube videos, just saying. And that's why novice programs in general tend to be so aggressive. We're trying to force you to put in the required effort. It's not that you need to do this necessarily, but it's like, bro, push yourself a little bit. And I think that would solve a lot of problems if you ran a good system coupled with the effort. That said, there is a thing as taking things too far, which is the third point for today's video. Many times a lifter will have so much belief in himself that he'll overdo the volume, which distorts the entire program. If your workout called for 2 compound movements per muscle group, which is pretty high, by the way, but you think to yourself, let's do 3 or 4, guess what? Fatigue will accumulate so much that you will not be recovering properly for your workouts, especially if it's a high frequency system. You can't get away with this on a full body 3 times a week. You will have to reduce your frequency, which is not good right now. There is a time and place for that, but if you're capable of adding, like I said before, 5 pounds to your squat every single session, why not take advantage of the opportunity if you were able with the lower volume approach? Sometimes less is more, and recovery really is the most important factor here. If you're not progressing despite putting in more effort, then the return on your investment is not good. There is such thing as overdoing the system. And if that means training like a competitive bodybuilder or running a system that is far outside of your training ability right now, the gains will probably not be better, even though you would assume that this is true. You don't have to do everything in one session, every single movement pattern with all the accessories and isolations. Think about the total workload here and how different days have different exercises. It adds up. Moving forward, let's talk about the fourth error, trash form, which comes in 2 ways, through ego lifting or partials on traditional compound movements. That can include doing 15-inch box squats as opposed to 12-inch box squats. It could be not touching your chest on the bench press while flaring the elbows out completely to the side, guillotine style. Now good, my friend. It could even mean compromising the depth of your deadlifts. Look, it's not full range of motion as defined by your anthropometry. We're talking about the size of the Olympic plates, but it's full range of motion for the exercise. So that's how you want to treat it. Don't be doing 4 to 6-inch block pulls right now. You're probably not at the strength level where you got to start worrying about the ratio between pulling from the floor and an elevated surface. There is a time and place for that, but novice training is far more simple. And unless you have injuries, you should just do the exercises as they were originally designed. Most of you will get to the intermediate stage without having nagging pains anyway. I wouldn't necessarily stress about overuse right now. That's why novice programs tend to be more minimalist by design. And we don't hear guys complaining about being beat up all the time, even though they're doing the same thing for months at a time. My point is this: full range of motion is generally superior for hypertrophy. It also standardizes the range of motion such that everything is trackable and consistent, while probably being safer on the joints as well. Basically, on the bench press, you're going to learn how to tuck those elbows and keep that back tight. Whereas if you're doing partials, you might end up using that bro form. So that's just one little bonus aspect to this. Now, in regards to ego lifting, I'll define that as escaping the boundaries of correct form. That can mean using tremendous body English on your rows or bouncing the bar off your chest on the bench press when your program called for pause. It could be compromising the range of motion. So if you're doing an acid grass squat, now you're doing quarter squats. Not saying you have to do ATG, by the way, but that's just an example. Deadlifts, you're rounding like a cat to get that extra repetition when you could have stopped right then and there. So most of the ego problems tend to be within your control as long as you stay accountable. And that's why filming yourself is such a valuable tool in this day and age. You can see if there are problems going on. Finally, it's going to include deviating away from your system, modifying the parameters such that you don't even know what you're looking at anymore. Like doing 1 rep maxes before your 5x5 bench. You don't have to do that, bro. Heck, performing lots of 1 rep maxes in general on novice programs is not a good idea. Yeah, we see this all the time. Guys want to find out, am I close to that 2-play benchmark yet? When they're only doing 135, so they go max out, maybe they get 160 and it's grindy and it looks ugly. You don't have to do that. Focus on building your strength, okay? There comes a point where we can employ the max effort method as a part of the yearly strategy, but not right now. Certainly not on a linear progression system that has you doing, the basic compounds with standard volume, and I'm not even gonna go there. Check your ego before you wreck yourself. Anyway, let's finish off this video with the last error, not doing bodyweight training or cardio in general. Just think about it. You're going to spend a year or two putting on all this muscle mass and strength while not maximizing your fitness in the process. Why? Isn't it a fantastic opportunity to take advantage of the newbie gains while also proving to yourself once and for all that the idea that cardio kills your gains is indeed a myth? It's the ultimate test, and I will say confidently that you will not fail unless it tends to impair your recovery. But in that case, you're doing the wrong activity while not recovering correctly within the diet and sleep aspect. So if anything, this will keep you more accountable. You'll be forced to consume more protein, eat the right amount of calories, not do the yo-yoing stuff. So some days in a deficit, other days in a surplus. And of course, you'll actually have to track, because now it's not just about intuition. Sometimes novice lifters can get away with subpar diets because they're not doing extra activities. But I can guarantee you that if you're a construction worker running a novice program, that's not really the same thing, because there's other factors that go beyond the sedentary lifestyle. So these additional things make you more accountable and complete. You won't be that traditional lifter who's all buffed up but can't run 5 minutes. It's all too common. I think that's a darn shame. And of course, your health will be maximized. Don't let anyone tell you that not doing cardio is good enough. It isn't. All the best research is starting to demonstrate that, yeah, you want to do a combination of resistance exercise and cardiovascular work. That should have been common sense from the very start. And I highly recommend that you begin by doing both. This way, there's no excuses ever, and you'll feel the best. Why would you not want to do this? I'm talking about better work capacity and the ability to display performance in other ways. And in regards to the bodyweight training aspect, you can either do this as a part of supplementing your program, like doing weighted pull-ups, weighted dips, push-ups on the side, or you can start off with calisthenics before doing weights. And many of us had that opportunity. If we're talking about 2020 till now, that's cool. And if you didn't, don't stress. I'm not going to tell you to drop what you're currently doing to specialize in calisthenics. We all have our own goals after all. But do know that this is technically an option. Building your foundation with some of the best bodyweight moves of all time. Basically, take what's applicable to you, discard the rest. Maybe you don't want to do the skill work, but the ring exercises or weight variations are applied. Heck, look at Paul Anderson, who used handstand push-ups to raise his OHP. So if you only care about being big and strong, this is still going to help you. Feel free to mix in some weighted calisthenics and use the basic variations for high repetitions, conditioning type workouts. I'm talking about GPP. You'll soon learn that all the stuff I'm talking about in today's video is synergistic. And bodyweight training is one of the biggest X factors in this equation of physique gains. Don't skip out on something that's independently impressive while also being beneficial for your weights, because we can't deny the work capacity effects as well as the carryover that you get from some movements. Like if you're strong at weighted dips, it will help your bench press. Finally, if you start now, it's easier to maintain later down the road. It's a lot more difficult if you lifted weights for 5 years while doing zero bodyweight training. Now you're starting to get into it, than the other way around, especially if you were skinny when you began, because now everything was built up at a proportionate rate. You went from having no muscle to getting more fit, more proficient at bodyweight movements, and mastering the compound moves in the gym. That to me is so much better than being a one-dimensional lifter. Your training options are way more than a guy who didn't do this stuff. And you can pick and choose what you want to include in your program instead of being restricted or playing catch up, which is all too common. And with that said, there's not much else for me to say. I hope this video wasn't too complicated. I tried to keep it simple and relatable, so let me know how you like this segment. And of course, let's see your feedback in the comment section. What has your experience been like with novice programming? What mistakes did you make? What would you tell people not to do? Let's hear it, and I'll talk to you all next time.